monitor?
Sure.
Chad?
Yep.
We'll do our best with Chad. If you get missed, just speak up, please. All right, well, we're ready to roll, so why don't we call this meeting to order? So I'd like to call the Water Services Committee meeting, December 4th, to order at 9 a.m. And first order of business is to welcome everyone, and then the traditional lands acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. We have an agenda. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda. It's moved and seconded in the room here. Is there any additions? Seeing none, we'll call a question. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, we'll talk about we'll have the minutes. Is there any? I did not attend the October 23rd meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes? Seeing that, those will go forward to the board. All right, so we'll move now to just the fun issues we deal with at Water Services. If it's not asbestos pipe, it's statutory rights of way. So Chris is going to walk us through his report. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak a bit about one of the challenges that we have in our department that isn't always something that's easy to kind of gauge how much staff effort we'll have to dedicate to it. So as I've written in the report, just like any other regional district who owns water and utility infrastructure, we often have lots of sections of these systems that are on private properties. So simply kind of laying out some of the challenges that we have, even when this is an easy process, it often ends up being a long process and taking up quite a bit of staff time. I can put in there the quick review of staff time dedicated to statutory right-of-ways up until, I guess, the time of writing that report. So it's about 130 hours between the two staff that I have working on it. The majority of that falls to Eileen. I think I also pointed out in that report that, of course, where we do scope statutory right-of-way work within the job, we certainly set aside staff time and dedicate staff time to that. But I think we're increasingly finding that often a lot of unplanned time is spent on this work. So just wanted to bring that to Water Services Committee attention. There's no easy way out. I think what staff are doing right now, trying to make it as seamless and easy for those owners, those parcel owners that we are looking to secure statutory right away from, make that process easy and understandable for them. Even when you do that, you are going to end up with some challenges. And I think I also put in that report to, it kind of permeates into a lot of the work that we do. Of course, with future water and wastewater system acquisitions, that's kind of one of the prime things that we're going to look at is making sure that all of those statutory right-of-ways are secured prior to a transfer of any private service to an RD service. Certainly available here to answer any of your questions based on that report.
Yeah, I know there are a lot of the systems in Area F struggle with that issue where it's just the intake was on someone's land years ago and now the new owners are like, well, only a certain number of people can act, anyway, it's a big issue. Are there questions out there people would like to, because I have one myself. So we have an owner who says, you need to pay me for the statutory right of way. Are we allowed to pay for it? Is it like kind of our discretion, or are we statutorily not allowed to?
If I may?
Yeah.
We generally stay away from paying for statutory right of way. Once you get into that type of business, there is potentially no end to it. And so we have the tool of expropriation. We have not had to use it. It's a fairly heavy hammer and a fairly lengthy process. But we generally stay away from it. The only time we have made any form of payments was recently in a situation in Lister where there clearly was harvesting losses from the area that we disturbed during that period that they normally would have been harvesting. That very small payment and justified payment where people had lost the use of their land for the period of construction of replacing the land.
Yes, go ahead, Director Popoff.
Yeah, to the chair. So I do have a question. You know, I do have a water system, as everybody's aware of. There's a lot of trespass on property without statutory right of ways. Do we look at the cost of securing, you know, if, for example, if the owner says, no, I'm not going to give you the right of way, I want money for it. So do we look at the cost that we have to pay the owner versus the cost of moving it onto public right of way?
We certainly would. I don't think there's a whole lot of benefit to get too deep into this topic right now.
Fair enough.
You know, it is, every situation is differently. We certainly look at all options and look at the most cost economic resolution to the issue. Absolutely. And
That was the answer I was
so we
looking for. Thank you.
look at all possibilities and angles. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. We'll move on to item number 4, which is service area.
We have 2 speakers on the speakers list.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, we've got it there. We're semi onto it. Thank you very much, Director Vandenberg and
Director Watson.
Watson. Okay, sorry, I didn't know what order. Director Vandenberg, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, did I turn my microphone on? Yeah, okay. On the report, just a clarity question on page 2, third way down, last paragraph above land challenges. It says negotiations with Indigenous communities may be necessary, particularly when infrastructure crosses traditional or treaty lands and requires Indigenous land rights and First Nations involvement, so on and so forth. It says crossing traditional or treaty lands. I get treaty lands, but what does traditional mean? Like what is an example of the challenges when you're saying traditional?
The chair, that should just read treaty lands.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much.
So if I may,
Yes.
the bigger issue with that, if at all, is if there's identified areas of archaeological interest, then we have to do the required assessments prior to disturbing these lands or while we are disturbing the land. So that's more the issue, not the statutory right-of-way issue.
And through the chair, just to follow up on that too, and that would be a risk with or you know, something we'd have to look at with really any lands too. So
Supplemental then, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, then if that's the case, you would have to have a notification procedure on all right-of-way crossings to First Nations, because you don't know if it's going to fall into their sacred stuff and so on. Is that true?
So it's a tricky question. On road right-of-way, generally speaking, we are allowed to do that. It's considered and accepted as already disturbed land. So we have no obligations on existing highways, road right-of-ways to do any of these investigations. That is generally accepted as already disturbed, or there is nothing to save, nothing to investigate. It gets a bit more tricky if we get on private lands and disturbance there. I would argue in most cases it's the same situation, but that again would likely be a case-by-case decision.
Great. Thank you. Thanks.
But we have not done these investigations for land replacement to date.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Director Watson, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to respond to Director Vandenberg's questions as well. So there's a couple different things. If you're on the waterfront, which generally is going to be Crown, which would not be a statutory right of way, you definitely have to consult Indigenous nations and you use the consultative database to determine who, which could be up to 15 depending on where you are. When we look at DRIPA being embedded into legislation, I could see that it's good to have this in our policies as an anticipatory aspect because it's so variable to where that land is. And there are many places where we're going to be required to do more First Nations engagement. With the Woodbury one, which was not related to the statutory right of way, it was more related to the license of occupation. That's Crown land. Automatically, you're definitely consulting First Nations. So the consultative database was mostly what I wanted to mention on the who, which is kind of the only tool we have to know who do you talk to. I would not say only treaties just because we don't have treaties in our region and treaties are becoming an outdated mode of working with First Nations. So if it's specific to statutory rights of ways, generally you're talking private property, but I think we need some flexibility in that policy to address the fact that long term, we know there'll be more avenues we need to be considering when it comes to First Nations engagement. So that's just a note based on what Director Vandenberg said. What my actual question was what was my actual question? Do we have a policy in place? I don't want to give the specifics, but I definitely encountered the need to pay for a statutory right away. But would a policy give us provisions that would back us more in our ability to not set a precedent in doing so by paying for it? So I know it's in the acquisition policy. But do we need another policy that addresses as much as we can, given we don't have a lot of support from the province on these issues?
Can I make a suggestion? Sorry, Director, can I make a suggestion? If we want to get deeper into things that have somewhat of a legal tangent to it, I suggest we do that in an in-camera session. Is that okay with the Director?
I'm not asking for legal information. I'm asking if we have a policy specific to statutory rights of ways.
We don't have a policy in place.
Okay, I would recommend we do create a policy because it's not strong enough just being in the acquisition policy, given the nuances with statutory rights of ways.
So you're the chair of the board. Do you want to, with the executive committee this afternoon, find a place for that to come to the board?
Just
and then
simply
end up on the work plan at some point? What do you think procedurally be the best way for directors who wish to end up on the work plan?
Procedurally, I would simply make a motion that we direct staff to create a policy addressing issues with statutory rights of ways.
That's in order.
It's
Is there
on
a seconder?
Can I suggest, I would second it with an amendment. I'll second it, but then I'd like to speak to it.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor, Director Jackman, and then you can speak to, you've kind of spoken to it, Director Watson, but let's see what Director Jackman's amendment might be and we'll see where we go.
The motion says create the policy. I'd like to hear staff's report on the advantages or other mechanisms of clarifying, whether it's through policy or some other mechanism, clarifying the process for establishing or obtaining statutory right of ways. So I want to soften it. I don't want to just say create the policy. I don't have.
We may or may not need the policy. We're wondering what the process would be. Is policy the best?
So staff's reflection or comments on developing such a policy as direction to staff.
Okay, we'll
Now we
pause
come
for.
back to this commission.
Yeah, we'll pause for a moment and allow staff to ponder.
Could you reread what you have at this point?
I don't have, I just have direction to staff.
Okay.
So I
Okay,
could,
so could we please repeat that so we get that straight?
So Director Watson, are you in semi-agreement with a semi-friendly amendment that changes from directing for policy to investigating the need for policy? And then I'll turn it to Director Jackman to craft the wording. Over to you, Director Watson.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the motion itself and procedurally, it's a complete different direction. So I wouldn't consider that amendment. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I just don't understand what I'm trying to do is this report outlines a really big issue. It being only addressed through the acquisition policy in terms of process. I'm looking for other tools, and I would assume it's a policy. So I don't disagree with Director Jackman, but you need a different motion if we're going to direct staff to investigate tools to enable us to enact statutory rights of ways in the most feasible form.
I don't like doing these kind of things on the fly in a meeting. I wonder if, because statutory rights of way are being dealt with by staff right now, could you draft a notice of motion for the January or February meeting so that we have time to hash it out and get the right thing rather than debate it here and come up with something on the fly that isn't what we really want?
Can I ask a question back to staff?
Yes, please do.
In reading this report, I was expecting some recommendations over what we do about this. So are you already preparing to bring something back to us about what we do about it? Or do you need a motion that gives you the direction to investigate options such as a policy?
I'll turn that over to staff.
Yeah, through the chair, we're currently, dealing with securing a number of statutory right-of-ways for a couple of projects. And I think we are having some lessons learned, I guess, from that process on what seems to be working and what doesn't. So, I mean, that's an ongoing kind of continuous improvement thing that we do in our department. Can certainly do that and come back to the board with some recommendations based on what we see is working.
So, sorry, can I ask a question through the chair to the director about the purpose of the policy? What is it what we try to ensure in regards to process that we feel needs to be written into a board-approved policy? And the reason why I'm asking is that what we do right now is use every option on the table to optimize the solution in regards to getting a statutory right-of-way. And if we feel we step outside of the decision-making range of staff, we bring this here either in open or closed meeting for discussion. So I just try to understand what benefit or what process the policy would establish. And as soon as we establish that, our tools are limited to the tools written into the policy.
Right. So in other words, a policy can actually limit the flexibility that exists right now. So,
oh, sorry, I'm unmuted.
yeah, so I echo Uli's comments that I'm trying to find what to do here. So back to you, Director Watson. This is kind of becoming circular. I mean, you're in order to have a motion, your motion, it's been moved and seconded. We'll rework the wording if you wish, or we can turn it over.
If I may rephrase what I
Can I just respond to you? It'll be easy if I can just respond to you. I'll tell you why I'm trying to do this and I can take it offline.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Director Watson, please.
So, statutory rights of ways, we do not have the backing of legislation to enable us to ensure it's done in a financially and fiscally responsible manner. It comes between the owner of the property and us. A policy would set limits on what we're able to do that would support our ability to not set precedent on paying high amounts for statutory rights of ways. That's what I'm looking for, given that it does end up, I mean, the example I'd like to give, I'm not going to give, but that's the purpose, is we do actually need a policy that says this is as far as you can go. And that gives us a legal backing to say we can't go further than that. And so it doesn't limit your ability to negotiate, but it sets a limit on how high you can go, because we can be in a position of not having a lot of options, but to pay a lot for it. So that's what I'm looking for. Legislation doesn't back us on these. Utilities are supposed to not really be paying for statutory rights of ways. It's use of land for public service. We get backed into a corner because we don't have legislation to support us. That's why I'm looking for a policy. If that's too complicated right now, I'm happy to take it offline. This report outlined many concerns with the issues, cost, time, just to negotiate it, let alone when property owners actually want us to pay for it. That's what I'm looking for, more mechanisms to control.
Excellent. So basically setting some limits. So I'll go to Director Jackman, but I do think taking it offline, working with the chair, staff, and yourself on seeing what the best solution to the RDCK and a water system, limiting the amount it pays to attain a statutory right of way, that issue. There may be different solutions to that issue, and the legal side of it, and the province not willing to step forward and assist municipalities and regional districts doesn't help matters, obviously, as outlined by Chris's report. Director Jackman, and then we'll take it offline and see where we can get to. Go ahead, please.
So yeah, I think offline is going to be the way. I kind of apologize to the committee because what I thought was friendly was not. It wasn't seconded, so there is no amendment proposed. So I'm good with that. The recommendation to develop the policy can stand. It would come with even if you're able to develop a very crude framework of a policy, it's going to come with a staff report with some. This is why. My concerns were already stated, that we may be locking ourselves into a process where some of the options are beyond our control if we're going to go down the long path of forcing a right of way, and it would give us less flexibility. And I just think, if we get 100 of these between just Lister and Erickson alone, why would we not want to have some degree of flexibility in the short term? So I'm worried about locking into a policy. I acknowledge the comment that, yeah, we have no legislative backing on this, but sometimes we can overly constrain ourselves. So whatever, if we get a draft policy and some kind of pros and cons report, I guess that'll be what I'm looking for. So I'm good if the resolution, if it goes through, if it's referred, or if it's defeated, I don't need to amend it.
Okay, I'm going to just pause for a moment and ask the mover if the mover is now considering withdrawing the motion so that we can have an offline thing to find the best solution to the issues raised.
Yes, I will take it offline. And
Are you okay, seconder, with that?
Yep, withdraw.
Okay, so the motion's withdrawn. And Uli, did you want to make a comment or?
Yeah, no, for me, what's going through my head is if like for insurance purposes, for example, we have a policy that says we do snow removal to that level, and anything beyond is economically unreasonable, and that helps us protecting us from lawsuits. I don't see the same protection or effectivity or benefit from this policy. So I think we best have that discussion offline. For me, maybe as a piece that I'm missing right now, where we as an organization have a benefit from it. Ultimately, the board is the one that can override policies anyhow. So, yeah, I'm open for discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that in mind, I think there's more to come on potentially.
Through the chair, I've had my hand up and I'm using chat.
Oh, there it is. Yes, see that? Okay, we're still on statutory rights of way, and Director Vandenberg, please go ahead. We have no motion now. We're simply just in committee discussing an issue. Go ahead, sir.
Great, thank you, and through the chair. Uli, I think, did answer my question. My question was going to be going back to the reason for the report. It's a status report, but I'm not hearing from staff that they're wishing any direction from the directors in this regard. Putting the policy suggestion or opportunity aside, because I think there's some merit to it. but perhaps staff now knows that to look at a policy framework of sorts, which I will make a comment. I don't agree that that sort of thing should be discussed offline. That's the sort of thing that needs to be discussed within our committee, because I see merit on both sides of it, and I don't want to be excluded from that conversation. But more importantly, Uli answered the question that there is no specific direction that you're seeking from directors at this point. At least that's what I understand.
You are correct with that understanding, and certainly the offline portion is simply to focus the conversation so that the large group can have a focused conversation. So it's actually an opportunity to expand the conversation, but in a focused way. At least that's the chair's ruling at this point in time. So with the motion removed, we can, and seeing no further people on speaking list, we can move on. So,
Chair.
yes.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
just to confirm, there's no motion, but do you want me to record anything in the minutes in terms of direction to staff, or are you just going to continue the conversation after? Do you want anything recorded?
There should
Yes.
be nothing recorded.
Pardon me?
It shouldn't be recorded because the motion was removed, and we don't record direction to staff, and there is no direction to staff. I'm taking it offline, and back to Vandenberg, the report will outline anything that was discussed, although I get what you're saying. So for Emma, no, there would be no recording in the minutes.
We're good. Great, thanks a lot for that clarity. So we, thanks very much, Chris, for opening a simple topic, asbestos pipes, statutory rights away. Gotta love water systems, amazing. So moving on, and thanks for the discussion, everyone. Moving on to item number 4, which is service area bylaw amendment, North Sanka. I'll turn this over to Chris for discussion.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you. An item that's been in front of you a few times now. So at the last Water Services Committee, staff were directed to engage our colleagues at the province to get a little further direction on the process here when we don't have buy-in from a parcel owner to be removed from a service area. We have since, through Eileen's footwork and making some good connections, reached out to the province, gotten some clarity here. And then this, of course, brings us to the recommendations in the report in front of you now, which is that third reading of the bylaw, and then directing staff to prepare the necessary materials to provide the province, explaining the situation and looking for a decision and approval from the inspector. I think I've included pretty much all the main things in the body of the report. I think staff feel a little more confident after a couple of engagements with provincial reps on the process and possibility of success moving forward.
So I'll turn it over. Thank you very much. And I have a speakers list of Director Jackman, within whose area.
I will move third reading, and if it's seconded, I have a question or two for staff.
It's moved and seconded in the office here in the boardroom. So will Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Thanks. So, to the staff, assuming this package of information is probably mostly compiled, but before it actually goes to the ministry, would we want to have an advisory meeting, just so they know where we're at, that we've made third reading? And along the same lines, the sort of the easy conditions for the, under the removal is if the owner consented by petition and 2/3 of the participants said that they consent to removal, it would be done, it would be a lot less work. Between now, maybe talking to the advisory and actually submitting this package, would it be worth trying to gauge whether 2/3 of the participants would say remove these 2 parcels anyway, given the estimated $100,000 cost to go around? Or would that just be a complication? And I don't really need a hard answer today. I'm just trying to gauge what community will say. There's always sympathetic issues that are going to overlap with monetary issues. We have no idea, if there's going to be a repayment of past contribution through parcel tax, etc. So first, are we gonna be able to have an advisory committee before this goes down to Victoria that I would like an answer on? And the other one, just please think about it as you go through finishing off this package.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. You wanna? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, through the chair, certainly we can, put that package in front of, Water Services and the board prior to going out, and that was kind of the plan, to do, and you were correct, saying that it's probably already mostly put together. It is, email correspondence, the record of correspondence, description of, the problem at hand, and, a good package put together to sell this, to the province. Sorry, and
That's good. I don't need the other 2/3 vote sort of thing. That's just something to think about. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So what I was interested in, well, that's irrelevant. Does the two parcels that would be taken out of this system, do they have water, access to water or not?
through the chair, my understanding is that they could access, I think they could access the lake source, and of course they could potentially drill a well. They have not proceeded with that, and again, as I mentioned in the report and in the previous report, we've had kind of touch and go correspondence with that owner, indication that they were moving forward, and then most recent indication that they were not. But they are not, orphaned, so to speak, from water. It's the matter of applying for a license and making that happen.
Okay.
As per photo, they are both lakefront property.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Got it. I just couldn't okay, is there Director Watson, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. One quick communication note: when you guys are talking to each other and kind of over, it mutes you all out. It's hard to hear.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't notice that until I'm on this end. My question was just to try and understand. I know that it's a bit of an awkward situation because they don't necessarily have water, but can you clarify for me, is the reason for removal to do with the fact that there's potential contamination with their hookup? Is that essentially what it is? I just needed a refresher on this because the report I found a little confusing, but that's likely on my end because I don't have the kind of history Director Jackman does. So I'm just trying to remember why we're disconnecting them.
Yeah, through the chair, as written in the report, that water line, our water line, does cross private property with no statutory right of way, and also close distance with sanitary mains that we are, well aware of our compromise, and the water line's compromised as well. So it is, risk. And human health does come into to play with this decision. It's a matter of being able to not resurface that property, so to speak, through that route would not work unless we had a statutory right of way, and then another route would be quite expensive and not on the priority list for saying a system that has much higher priorities for need as far as infrastructure replacement and improvement go.
And to add to it, it's a very old line that has a break history and recorded a substandard type of line that is at risk of breaking probably likely frequently, and overlain with low pressure sewer pipes, so there's a substantial risk there. On the other hand, the system is on a permanent boil water node, so residents should know that the water source isn't potable without further treatment. But complex situation, as you pointed out, it would be costly to replace it because it's either through this current property with the required technical solutions crossing these sewer sections, or going around along the highway, narrow corridor along a stretch. So it would be significant financial strain to reservice these two properties.
Thank you. So,
Chair Vandenberg has his hand up, not in chat. I don't know how you prefer to see a hand.
Director Vandenberg, please go ahead. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that explanation, and through the chair. So We prefer not to cross through the properties because if we do, then we would have to look at an upgrade because the current lines are not so bueno type of thing. And then we resolve that cost by removing those properties from the area. But then my question is around what if in the future the property owners decided that they wish to make connection back to the system of water. Do I understand this correctly? Because it is kind of confusing.
It would then
Yeah,
be,
go ahead, yeah,
it would then be handled like any other new service area expansion where the property owner pays for the full servicing cost plus a certain cost to become part of the water system as we have established in our bylaws. So it would be very costly, obviously, to reconnect if future property owners want to, plus at the current type of system that we have, where we have no treatment, where we are on a permanent boil water system situation, we would not be, from a staff side, in favor of expanding the water system.
Right. Thank you. So, and I've got a supplemental I ignored or avoided, and I've got Director Jackman just wanting to add to the comments regarding Director Vandenberg's question. So go ahead, Director Jackman, and then Director Watson.
This step will provide us more clear direction without a doubt from the inspector. If there's a monetary transfer to be made or some compensation for past contribution to the system, whatever, it'll give us give staff some clarity around that option. It makes it real, because so far this is just kind of drifted back and forth with staff communicating out and not a lot of clear responses. The other thing, there's things we haven't explored. The Old Elks Camp, there's 14 independent users there. They have a kind of a development permit thing, more or less stalled with development services. This impacts them as a whole. If they clean up what they're doing and how they're purveyors of water somehow to 14 members, they could potentially have water to the two parcels to the north. That would be arm's length. We don't have to be involved, but there's other possibilities that have never been explored. They would still be sourcing Sanka water, but from that existing crib stop that we'll make sure is upgraded backflow preventer, they can do what they need as they need and satisfy the 14 users plus 2 beyond. So this, again, this step, making it real with third reading, going to the inspector, will maybe get a universally satisfactory solution. If we don't do third reading, we just stay where we are in limbo. It's not real to anybody. It's good enough until something happens, until we have a major contamination somewhere. So this is completely appropriate, gives staff clarity, and gives 2 or 3 paths for the landowner to maybe consider more seriously. There are hundreds of lake water systems now. It's not as if drawing water out of the lake is going to deplete Kootenay Lake. It's just no application has been made over the many years we've been talking about this.
Thank you. We have a motion moved and seconded. Go back to the missed supplemental. Director Watson, supplemental?
Yeah, thank you. Director Jackman did help fill in some of the blanks from me. The other question I had was just clarifying, if I'm recalling correctly, I believe the system went to an AAP to look at some infrastructure upgrades and it was declined. Is that correct? And I'm sorry, I'm grateful that I get the third reading puts it into a position where a solution has to be found. So I get that that's part of what's occurring here. I'm also grateful to hear that in that process, hopefully what they've been contributing to capital assets through the parcel tax would be considered, hopefully considered, if they were to reconnect when the system could take them on. So just those were kind of my comments. And if I recall correctly, Sanka declined an increase, which pretty much put you in a rock and a hard place to do the upgrades, but maybe I'm not remembering the right thing. That was my supplemental.
So we could, is it applicable to the motion? I guess it is. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, through the chair, Director Watson, yeah, you are certainly right. The Sanka community did have a significant vote. I believe that was 2016. They voted down long-term borrowing to build a treatment plant for Sanka. So that's where we end up today with a long-term boil water advisory and the system that we have.
Great, thank you. So we've got a motion, it's been moved and seconded. I'll now call the question. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, this motion carries. We'll go to board and does it go to board?
Yes.
Okay. So it'll move on to board. So moving on to agenda item number 5, which is the parcel tax amendments. Eileen, would you like to lead us through this amendment, parcel tax amendment process, please?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So basically, we have the opportunity to make sure that we are allowing for enough requisition for parcel taxes by looking at our maximum requisition amounts and increasing them by 25% every 5 years without having to go to an alternate approval process or anything like that, basically without inspector approval, which is similar to what we were just talking about. So what we want to make sure is that we're just increasing that maximum requisition amount when we have the opportunity to do so. Because say we forget about it, we look at a service establishment bylaw, which always has the maximum requisition amount in there, and we say, yeah, we've got some room there for increases in taxes over the next few years. And then it just kind of gets forgotten about. And then the next thing you know, 15 years have gone by and you're maxed out and you never took that opportunity to bring that requisition amount up as time went on. It's basically you can do 5% a year. So what we do is we just kind of go through all of our service establishment bylaws every couple of years and have a look, and we're getting close to the maximum, or whether we just want to give ourselves some room for having extra capacity in the system, then we basically want to just amend the service establishment bylaws to bring the requisition amount up when we have opportunity to do that. So we had a look. These are the ones that were identified, these 5. They're listed at the bottom there. I believe they're Balfour, Duhamel, Burton, Ryandell, and Woodbury. Some of them are right at the maximum requisition amount right now, and some of them are getting close, and we have the opportunity to bring them up because it's been 5 years since we've done it last. So they are recommended for an increase, and also based on our asset management plans. So when we look at our asset management plans, we have numbers in there that tell us what we should be collecting annually to make sure that we have adequate reserves for asset replacement over time. So there's a table in here, table 1, kind of breaks down all those numbers. You'll see a number over 100 years, a number over 25 years. Those are projected amounts that we should be collecting annually to make sure that we have enough money to replace pipes, improve the infrastructure in any way, whether it's the treatment plant, whatever. We'll always seem to be falling a little bit short. So this is our way of making sure that we're collecting enough money to put into reserves for asset replacement over time. And you'll see that in table 1. And so these are 5 service establishment bylaw amendments that are recommended in this report. And then the next step would be, because these take two meetings to adopt, the next step would be to look at the parcel or frontage tax bylaws that accompany them and then amend those as well. But those only take 1 meeting to adopt. So we want to start with these and then move on to their associated parcel or frontage tax bylaws.
Thank you. So we'll, prior to having any motions on the floor, we'll have a conversation. Director Weatherhead and Director Jackman. Go ahead, Director Weatherhead.
I'm on the list as well.
Okay. I believe you. I just can't see it. And Director Watson. Go
I
ahead,
think
Director
Director
Weatherhead.
Watson is first. She's before me, I believe.
Go ahead, Director Weatherhead, please. Just,
Okay.
I saw yours first. Oh, I see Watson's under the other one. I thought it was Director Watson's with the previous one. Okay, please go ahead.
Okay,
Director
thank you.
Weatherhead.
Thank you through the chair to staff. I actually have more than one question and a comment, but I'll start with the first question. being that it mentions a BC property tax deferral program, which is just a low interest loan. This is quite a significant hike. I just had a complaint about the 633, just happened to have a complaint about that last week. So in a significant hike like that, and we're talking about if we can do this 5% per year, is this customary to do a large hike all at once? If this is hard hit, this low interest loan piece just sounds like you're still paying the tax no matter what. Some of the disparity that I have in the Burton community is that, of course, some people are on rate holiday and some are not, and it's quite a division that creates all these really interesting social things that are kind of negative. So really my question being, would it be better to do these in smaller increments than this? That's my first question, sort of.
Yeah, sure, through the chair, I can
Go ahead, Chris.
address that. It's essentially a matter of, do we put aside the money and build what we need to now, or do we kick the can on this in the future? So, looking at the asset management plans, as Eileen has pointed out, and the needs of these systems, these are our recommendations moving forward. We do always consider that cost of ownership, or that cost of providing water for the homeowner. Again, these costs are going to have to be borne by the users of the system, regardless whether we do it now or in the future. So we believe this is a responsible increase, aligned with what we're allowed to do to put adequate reserves away and really roll out our asset management and replacement plans as we should.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Uli.
And if I may, through the chair, and specific to the director's water system, Burton, if you look at the numbers, current contributions are less than 1/3 of what is suggested through the asset management plan as a long-term sustainable contribution for the 25-year period. So it's one of the systems where we are in trouble in regards to asbestos pipes in one of the systems that's totally done with asbestos pipes that require removal within the next 10 years or so for the whole system. So that is one of the systems where we are with the back to the wall, and that's why we are proposing the 25% increase as the maximum allowable without public assent process.
Thank you.
Supplemental?
Yeah, supplemental to that, I am putting together a committee, an advisory committee, but this is saying that these are discussed at advisory committees in the annual budget meetings, which this community does not yet have. So my question, and also around economic, grouping Burton into economic development is a tough one for me because there's no economy in Burton. But nonetheless, the advisory committee, they are not, how are we communicating these increases and these amendments to those who are paying on the system? And is there any concern that at some point BC Hydro is just going to lift their rate holiday and leave everybody high and dry on the Arrow Lakes?
Yeah, so we are aware of the issues on some of the systems, and we are owing some of these water systems a public meeting to discuss the situation, the financial situation, long-term situation for these water systems. So Burton is one of them, Fouquier is one of them. Very clearly, we have identified the need to have a public meeting there. We just have not managed to get around to arranging them, but they are on our to-do list. as soon as we are able to reasonably work off a couple of priority items to get these community meetings organized. They are required. We definitely, it is not an issue that at these dollar amounts, easily explained in a one-pager in the utility bill insert. We need to talk to the community. We need to be there in person to explain the difficult situation they are in or we are in with that water system.
Right, thank you.
In the meantime, it's just a notice to them. That's all they get.
I don't know, we hope we can arrange something before the utility bills go out, but I do not make promises because the budget process is a difficult one that sidelines us quite a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess just one comment I'd make, living on a private system, is trying to avoid the one-time $20,000 ask of each of the participants because something haywire happened and major disaster happens, and those people really struggle with that. And we had that at our water system, 6 Mile Water Users Community, where December 7th, 3 years ago, our line just washed out and we lost 100 meters of our line, and there was a quick $150,000 just out of the blue in the middle of winter. So I know it's painful for people, and yes, it's a very difficult, challenging thing. So I'll move on to the speakers list, and I'll go to Director Watson, who I missed first. Please go ahead, Director Watson.
Thank you. I need to go back to Director Weatherhead's question because there's a really clear distinction that was not made. This bylaw and the updates to third reading is to increase the limit on what can be taxed for. That is not the same as what you might budget for. We need to be really clear that it's not an automatic tax hike. The budget process is where you as director have discretion to set what those tax rates are. The bylaw just gives you the ability to increase it. Right now, bylaw limits say you can tax for $100. If you're taxing at $100, you can't increase that. So what the bylaw increase does is says you can now tax more. It does not mean you have to. So there's a clear distinction between increasing a bylaw limit and increasing it in the budget. I'm not disregarding staff really see the importance of asset management. What Chair Newell just said is a very true thing. So it's a difficult discussion, but you can stagger the increase when it comes to the budget. The increase to the limit on the bylaw itself, you should just stick to the process that's there because you don't know where you need to go based on asset needs. So we need to be really clear when we're increasing bylaw limits, that is not the same as automatically increasing your budget by 25%. The budget process will determine based on asset management, based on your parcel tax, what are you doing? You get to set that. And normally you do that in conjunction with a CAC. So great, you're going to have a CAC, but we need to be really clear about that because it's very confusing to the public. We're not automatically increasing by 25%. The tax, we're increasing the ability to build up to asset management requirements. So it gives us that ability. My question was actually...
Yeah, no, good clarity. Go ahead, please.
My question was actually related to the CACs. So, and I'm sorry, I really appreciate staff were able to get this report out to us Monday night because I wasn't able to read it yesterday and I could not get through the whole report. So full disclosure, I'm sorry if this is in the report. When does this go to our CACs and hoping it gets to them before it comes back to the board table for approval?
Yeah, through the chair, hoping a CAC before the Christmas break if possible.
Otherwise, sorry if I contradict a bit. Yeah, less than 2 weeks before the Christmas breaks for some of us at least. So we won't get to all of them before that. Before the Christmas break, the bylaws, as the director pointed out, is only expanding the tax tool for us. If we are concerned about the misunderstanding at CAC member level in regards to what we are doing here, that this is not precluding the 25% tax increase in their budget, we can send a message out in that regard if that's what you're afraid happens. We do what we can to have as many meetings as possible prior to the Christmas break and shortly after. But again, scheduling and things like that, and finishing the budgets that are to be discussed at these meetings, in short, we're struggling getting all of them done in that time frame.
So supplemental.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. So it's not only informing the CACs because we value their input and we need to respect that. And I get timing. I'd like to know when we're going to book those meetings because they need to be booked regardless of before Christmas breaks and just our schedules ourselves as directors. So hopefully they're getting booked before Christmas, not necessarily occurring before Christmas, but getting booked before Christmas. So our Januaries fill up. The purpose of really ensuring CACs are in this loop is they're not only there to provide advice, which on this case, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with the direction staff is taking. I support this motion, but they're also there to communicate with the communities so that we're not always the ones trying to provide info and we can't always be the ones doing it. So the CACs help disseminate to their communities, what is this? How does it work? Why are we doing this? So that's also their role. It's a two-way street. So if we can't meet with them before this comes back for adoption, at bare minimum, I'd like this report emailed out to our CACs and include the director for me at least. I think we're all on our CACs as it's their advisory. And we can communicate with our CACs via email if needed to go through those details because it helps quite a bit for the users of the system to understand what this is. And CACs, for me at least, are incredible at being able to help with that.
I'll just pause for a second.
In short, yes,
Yeah.
we will make every effort that all CACs and commission meetings are scheduled prior to the Christmas break, subject to availability of the members, obviously. Again, this is only providing the tools, not the actual increase. All commissions and committee members have a existing approved financial plan that lays out the increases over 5 years. Yes, in some cases, they may go up and down from what we provided last year, but they do have a 5-year framework in front of them that does in most cases not say 25% tax increase in 2025. So they have a tool and we certainly will make every effort if you feel that is required to communicate with them prior to the meeting, maybe as part of the invite.
And as chair, I just would like to point out that with all due respect, I think we as a group need to say this is a communication strategy rather than one director guiding staff time. So I just caution that, and it's with all due respect, but we as a group need to direct staff to take on more tasks like sending this report out or whatever. I would also add that, but anyway, staff seem to think that it's okay that's a good part of their communication process with the CACs, so we'll let it go at that and I won't belabor it. Did you want a supplemental, Director Watson?
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm not directing staff to do anything outside of the purpose of a CAC to begin with. I'm only clarifying when does it occur. If staff is not able to do it, which it says they are, that's great. Then I would circulate it to my CAC. It's about information dissemination and making sure people understand what's happening. That's critical to us not having adversity. So it's not outside direction. It's the baseline of having a CAC.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't mean to nitpick, but it's just one of my things I put on the survey and is that we decide not as a particular director, but sorry, I didn't mean to pick on you. Poor taste. My apology. Just a second, please.
Weatherhead's on there.
Okay, again? Okay. Director Jackman, Director Schmank, and Director Weatherhead. Go ahead, Director Jackman.
Yeah, thanks. So, I did a close scrutiny of Sanka and Greendale. And so this is an appropriate shift. We've talked for a long time about the capital reserve, doing the capital upgrades and the operations being covered through the user fee, water fee. So just as an example, Greendale, in 2025, we'd have a shortfall in contribution to capital reserve, where it sits currently, of some $32,000. That means the user fee is subsidizing by $32,000 that long-term capital need. And in 2026, it increases to a $36,000 subsidy, the money coming out of the wrong pot. If everything we've been teaching and educating our users, our communities on over the last decade or more is going to be followed through on, we need to have this envelope stretched. But at the same time, the message I hope to these CACs would be, there's now an opportunity to reduce the user fee if we choose to accelerate the contribution, not take 5 years to get up to this stretched funding envelope, increase or accelerate the increase in the parcel tax and contribution to reserve, while we reduce in the short term the user fee, because that is appropriate, because the money's coming from the wrong place. At least in the case of these two systems, you might wonder, one with treatment, one without. The one without needs treatment. That is holding up the entire community's expansion. 14 potential lots in Sanka at that one site alone. I can't use names. The cooperative development. The boil water notice is dead in that community. So the CAC needs to educate. The question, beyond my quantification, two-step process, I understand, but just to clarify, is this one where we must have 3 readings, then it goes down to the minister, then it bounces back? Or can we do 2 readings? Because in terms of good faith, if there's a great idea from one advisory, we're not rescinding 3rd reading, changing and putting it back up. Do we need to go 3 readings to have this process go smoothly? Or can we go 2 readings at this point, followed by 3 readings and adoption at the 2nd stage?
I'm actually not completely clear on.
Well, the recommendation would be to go 3 readings in all 5. Can we go 2 readings at this point, which is normal if you're anticipating in good faith receiving input and maybe tweaking the numbers before finalizing.
With the February 20, when's our deadline for this? I think we are in a bit of a time crunch to.
Yeah, I can speak to it through the chair, if that's okay. So with these ones, they don't need to go for, just to be clear, they don't need inspector approval because we're staying within that 25%. We're not, that's the whole point of doing these, is that we don't want to let it go too long. So otherwise you run that risk to go past 25% within a 5-year time frame. So these don't need to go for inspector approval, but what they do, because it's a service establishment bylaw amendment, there needs to be that one clear day between 3rd reading and adoption, which for us becomes 1 clear month. So we do have 3 meetings before the taxation deadline of February 28th. So we have December, January, February. So if your preference is to give it 2 readings and then 3rd reading and then adoption, we do have those 3 meetings available. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, nothing to do with Victoria. That's great. 25% rule, 5 years. My general sense is when you do 2 readings, that is really saying to the public, here's something on the table, but we're not beyond amendment. There's a difference in my mind, always has been. When you go 3 readings, that says if you don't like it, you would have to rescind. So if it's possible to go 2 readings and we can do this, I would favor that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, let's sit with that, think about it, Director Schmink, and then think Director Weatherhead and Tierney. So Director Schmink, please go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, and I apologize because I'm not normally here and never did this when I was the director. But I'm just trying to understand the asset. I understand obviously the asset management requirements and where we're going with that. I'm just kind of curious if basically we have a generation that's paying for all new water systems and then also ensuring that the next generation has an operating water system. So you have a generation actually paying for everything, even into the future. And is that a conscious discussion that the committee has ever had? Or is that a discussion that makes any sense to other people? Because me, I think you try to spread that over one generation. I understand the reasons for capital reserves and emergency funds and things like that, but I don't understand having to put bear the cost all on one generation. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Is that what we're doing, or are we? Which is it?
Yeah, really, I'd like to address the asset management plan and concept and theory.
So let's stay with the example in your area, Balfour. The truth is actually somewhere in between. Past systems, when they were established, often were built in part or to a large degree with contributions of federal and provincial grants. The improvements that we did when we did the not so much the treatment plant, but when we did the reservoir replacement and the meter infrastructure, for example, had a significant amount of grants in it. So that means at least the current generation isn't paying it indirectly through taxes or whatever. Yes, absolutely. But it is not that everything that's currently has been done or is going to be done is paid by this generation, plus they are paid for the full replacement. And Balfour is a little bit of an exception, but as you see on the other ones, they are all under contributing, which means when they replace infrastructure, they have to have as well a loan, which then stretches it into the next generation. Loans are typically 25-year loans, so they go over a couple of generations. It's a mixed bag, and that we make sometimes conscious decisions where we say, yes, this can't be done through just a ratepayer now. Loans are part of the picture. We keep that in consideration. Balfour is a little bit of an outlier, and if you look at here, Balfour is actually making already significant contributions. The reason why we have Balfour on the list here, in spite of that, is that we had a lot of discussions in the last couple of public meetings that we had. It's now a couple of years ago, but when we had public meetings, i.e. when we did the last stretch across the ferry there, the line replacement down Basque Road, it was that other residents said they are getting now the new line, they're getting hydrants, they're getting fire protection and insurance breaks, and we do not. So we should have a differential user fee. From a staff's perspective and organizational perspective, we said, no, we are not supporting differential user fee, but what we can do, if there's sufficient support for that, we accelerate the line replacement schedules so that other residents get quicker the benefit of insurance breaks, which actually more than offsets the cost of the increase in regards to replacing these lines. Having said that, not all of them get that benefit in the short to midterm because the upper area, we had two pressure areas in Balfour, and the upper area actually is still far from it. With the well development that we have underway at Queens Bay Resort, we may get to that point that we can have fire flows in the upper area too. But like I said, the main purpose here is to stick to an aggressive pipe replacement schedule in order to provide fire flows to these other residents that don't get that benefit. So specifically the western section or the lower section of that one system. So that's the background on that one. And I'm happy to have that discussion with the community again, if that's what we want to continue to do.
Thank you. And who pays? People who wore it out, people that are going to benefit, or people that are using it now? That's the ongoing discussion. Very good point. Moving on with the speakers list, I have Director Tierney and then Director Weather. Director Tierney.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I thought Teresa was first here, but yeah, I was gonna, I realized that the personal tax bylaw amendment does not include Area B. However, I left home early this morning to get to the Trail Hospital. I have a day procedure today, which I have to leave the meeting there in half an hour. So the fact that the CACs came up, I'll take the opportunity to comment on the Erickson CAC, which was formed about a year ago, has never met. And I'm hoping that the meeting can take place for the first time. I thought it was going to maybe take place before the end of the year. Maybe it won't now that there's maybe a greater need to meet with other CACs prior to the end of the year. But Chris and I had a conversation in regards to the Creston Alternative Water Supply meeting, and that the Creston Valley Ag Group weren't contacted about the meeting. Neither was the Erickson CAC. So just wanted to make note of that it's really important to keep these volunteer groups in the loop if we expect them to support us getting together, discussing our issues. So just to comment, the speed at which the meeting was moving, I wasn't sure we were going to get to the Creston Alternative Water Supply issue. So I'll be leaving the meeting here in about a half hour, and thought I'd make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may briefly,
Go ahead.
part of delays both for the Arrow Creek and the Erickson Commission meeting or CAC meeting and Arrow Creek is a commission meetings delay was to some degree that we had hoped that we have an important report with some decision making to come to particularly Arrow Creek, but that directly affects Erickson, which is the filtration study that we have underway. So it will set the stage significantly in regards to future investments to hopefully reduce filtration costs in that system. That report did not quite come together as fast as we had hoped. So we will have an Erickson Commission similar to all the other ones that we had said. We will schedule prior to Christmas. If it's happening prior to Christmas, it's a different story, but we will schedule it prior to make the scheduling prior to Christmas with a meeting to occur then potentially in the beginning of January, or if so possible, even before Christmas. But it's in the works.
Supplementary?
Thank you. Great, Director Weatherhead.
Supplementary?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that information, Uli. It probably is not important that it happened before Christmas, if you have a lot of other meetings to fit in there, but certainly before we need to talk to them before the tax issues are approved for this coming year. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm saying sometimes before Christmas because after Christmas, the January looks just as ugly scheduling wise than before Christmas does. So it doesn't make much difference.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Director Weatherhead, please go ahead.
Thank you. Not to belabor the issue of CACs, but I do have one more question. I have two members that have stood up in Burton, and I've put those names forward. If I was able to get a third person, which would make quorum, not that I'm expecting a meeting immediately, but would those three people then be sent any kind of information prior to a meeting, or would we require a meeting first to sort of explain matters?
If I may, if as soon as these two persons are confirmed through the board process, we can arrange even a meeting with them. The quorum is written in there, but this is a very informal group, and we are quite happy to proceed as well with two persons instead of three. So there's no formal quorum requirement. We target 3 to 6 members, but this is not a must-have.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that.
Oh. All right, moving on to numbers. Oh, Director Watson. Oh, never mind. Okay, moving on to, is there a motion? We gotta do a motion and we see what Director Jackman decides to move and then we'll take it from there. Sorry about that, folks.
Provided staff have confidence, I would move 2 readings today, assuming the 3rd reading would be at Water Services in February, and then the adoption could be at board prior to the budget adoption. That would give us all of it. So I'll move two readings for all 5.
So sorry, can I, through the chair, ask Eileen, the communication about taxes to the ministry needs to happen, when is that, end of January or end of February? I keep forgetting.
It's end of February.
End of February.
Yeah, end of February. February 28th is the taxation deadline.
So we need 3 readings. I will move 3 readings for all 5 of these. If it's seconded, I have a question.
It's seconded in the room here. So we have, and we'll have a speakers list and I see Jackman Vandenberg. Go ahead, Director Jackman.
Okay, so
3 readings, just to be clear. We've moved 3 readings as in the agenda.
Because there's, the addendum and stuff, and I've been on the e-scribe, I haven't seen the wording of these 5 bylaws. Do they need to be full wording before the board tomorrow in order for board to sanction 3 readings? Because then we have to see within a certain period of time the actual bylaw wording amendment. So is it there somewhere, or have I just not seen the actual wording of the 5 bylaws for amendment? Is it on the scribe?
Isn't it the attachment? Yeah, it's the attachment in the scribe.
So
All 5 are there to do it. Okay. Okay. And
Yeah, so they're there.
I was looking under the actual agenda.
Yeah.
They're not listed under votes. However, they can be then listed for board tomorrow or next week.
They are here.
Agenda preps today, board next week. Okay, thank you.
So we've got 3 readings on the floor. Director Vandenberg.
I was only seconding. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further speakers, is there any opposition to 3 readings and this going forward to board next week? Seeing none, the motions carry. We're now going to, with Director Tierney leaving soon, I think we'll push through to 10:30. So we'll move on to agenda item number 6. Water operations and capital project update. Go ahead, Alexandra.
Thank you, through the chair. Good morning, everyone. The intent of this report is just to highlight some of the operation, maintenance, and capital items that have been completed in the reporting period. I'm not going to go through this line by line, but I'm opening up the floor to any questions that directors might have.
Fair enough. So we'll create a speaker system. We'll just take our time, no rush. We've all read it and it's pretty clear cut. And you know your systems, of course, so you know all this is happening and that's pretty awesome. So I'll tell you, we can move on
And from me, so if there's any questions both to the operations report or the capital plan that you would have following this meeting, please direct it directly to Alex. Give her a call. She's always there to answer questions.
Yeah, so anything.
Well,
yeah, so you can take it offline and If it's not applicable to the full meeting, we can move on. But go ahead, Director Jackman.
are we going to sort of jump through item 6 and 7 through this, the capital plan work items?
I'll address that separately.
Okay.
This is just for the reporting
Yep.
period, just an update. If you have any questions, yeah.
Okay, so seeing that, we'll move on to
Watson.
No, that's for previous, I think.
Yes,
It says never mind.
It is previous.
Yeah. So just give me a second here. So the,
5-year capital.
yeah, we're on that time. Okay, let's move on to that. I'm just trying to juggle the time here and what have you. So go ahead, Alex, and we'll go on to this item.
Certainly, through the chair, this is FYI, it's a draft 5-year capital plan. Again, I'm not going to go through each line item, but open the floor up to any questions directors might have.
Yes, so we'll have a speakers list here. Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I flagged 4 things, but the only one that really matters, I guess, Ainsworth servicing delivery under Riendell Water, 50,000 estimate. Is that assuming the backlane 2-inch or some other approach?
That assumes the 2-inch line that was discussed at the commission meeting. So 2-inch line servicing from basically parallel to Ainsworth in that alleyway between, I think, Headley and McCormick. Is that right? Yeah.
Supplemental?
Yeah.
So this came up at the commission meeting last night. I zoomed into the commission meeting because I stayed here. And again, there's a big question mark. What's going on? And I thought staff was waiting for the community to confirm if that was the way to go.
Yes.
I had a conversation with one of the previous commissioners who was there when we put the storm drain line in. And yet they came across 2 old iron lines that even if they were there, couldn't possibly have been used. The 2 service connections the other side. So I'm just wondering, is there something to unblock here in terms of the community saying, yes, we know what we're doing, or would that be an opportunity to have a drainage advisory in the near future, before after Christmas, so that they can give a clear direction? Because I think this is the only solution that makes sense. Do we need more pressure, or just simply schedule another drainage advisory to say, have you decided on this?
I find it a bit comical if we have to schedule a meeting in order to follow up on an action item they wanted to provide us. We are open to hear from them. We have actually listened to the inputs. We have agreed to go to the back alley. I would suggest, if we don't get feedback after reminder emails that were sent from Alex, that we just proceed with what is currently on the books with the back alley solution on this. I think we did a lot of bouncing back, looking for feedback, didn't get the feedback, even with reminders. I think at some point we move on.
And I should have said water and drainage, sorry, Chair, because they're combined. There's just so much chatter in community, inappropriately at last evening's meeting. We're fine. I'm good with the direction you guys are
Yeah, you can
going.
take it offline too.
Yes.
All right, so, trying to find my, list here. Okay, so just pause for a moment as I gather things. Okay, Director Watson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to staff on the fire hydrants for Woodbury. I think I asked this the last time. I just want to make sure I understand the process. They're listed but not yet started. Is that just something that will get initiated through the budget process this year? If the budget's approved to do them, then it ends up with an allocation in that plan? Or what's the right process?
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Director Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Looking at South Lacan, and I see $100,000 for the capital plan, and I believe that was discussed with the advisory committee, and there's still discussion going on. So this is a draft, from what I understand. And I don't see anything in 2026. I believe there was a project you're contemplating, but that's still in the future and to be discussed further with the advisory committee.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And the advisory committee at the last meeting that we had clearly expressed that they were not in favor of proceeding with that larger second project. So I think more communication and more details in regards to the difficulties establishing that line with rock and whatever did we have.
Yeah, I understand that. I was present at that committee meeting, but the question would be the $100,000. I believe after the meeting, they had some reservations on that. They needed some answers to questions they had, and I would like to thank Chris for the answer they provided. And they're still mulling it over, so it's still in the draft stages. But from my perspective, more than likely it should proceed as basically what you suggested, but it's still in the draft stages, and I'm still waiting some additional feedback from.
If I may, and since we are a group, I guess I'll explain a little bit on the topic so that others understand too what we are talking about. The concern was that we are using all of their reserves to replace this particular line. They had always agreed to somewhat aggressively contribute to reserves in order to gather funds to match future grants if there's matching monies required. Our comment was there's always the ability to do that through a loan. You can match grant amount if there's a matching money required through a loan. And so that's a tool that they have in addition to the reserves only. But that was the discussion on CAC level, just for the rest of the directors.
And just for a comment, so Alex, and you're aware, there are community works funds that I can use to support that project. And that's a discussion to be had on the amount.
We are open.
Thank you. Director Vandenberg.
Yes, thank you. My questions will be around Arrow and Erickson. I'll start with Arrow first. So we're on the membrane replacement. We're looking at 26 and so on at $600,000 a year. What is a reminder, please? What is the pilot study filtration at 50 grand for next year going to provide?
So through the chair, this is again just a draft, and we were anticipating the filtration feasibility study report to be completed. We just received it, so unfortunately I haven't been able to incorporate some of those dollar figures, especially when we're speaking to the membrane replacement amounts there and the pilot study filtration. That's just a placeholder for when we decide what that pilot study will entail. That's just a rough anticipated amount. Again, we'll have that conversation with the Arrow Creek Commission and yourself, Director Vandenberg, once we fully review the feasibility study report.
So,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead. To add to this, so the study definitely will include a component that the assumptions made for certain filtration technologies need to be field verified through a pilot. That's the pilot money. The other filtration money that you see in here, I don't know, do we still have the 600,000?
We do, yeah.
In there, they are a placeholder, simply a placeholder that we know at some point we have to replace the existing membranes, and we don't know what that's going to look like. We know that the existing membranes as they stand again cannot be replaced one for one. So the changes the company makes are always requiring modifications in the tanks to even replace the existing membranes. So that is a requirement. But I think the study will inform us what our best options or couple options are. The pilots will confirm if the assumptions in regards to treatment are applicable. And another component in the overall issue here is the interior health position in regards to filtration requirements. So that's another one. Alex is working ultimately with them, or will be working with them in regards to hopefully being able to reduce the filtration requirements that make the current system so expensive. We are talking, no matter what option we are going with, in multiple million dollar projects, somewhere between 4.5 and 10. I think we are sitting with the current numbers. So that's not pocket change on that. We definitely will have to verify some of the assumptions.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The last item in Arrow is heating energy upgrades, 300,000 for next year. I thought we completed all that work over the past 2 years.
Through the chair, we completed an assessment of what's required in the future for replacement. We are currently working on, the design has been completed to the point for issue for tender drawings. We're working on issuing that tender shortly here, but there's significant upgrades that are still required. So we've been doing sort of minor upgrades in ceiling, windows and door jambs, et cetera, but there is significant upgrades required in terms of makeup air unit replacements. There's ducting reconfiguration, so several, yes, there's still significant upgrades that will need to be completed.
And if I may add to it again, sorry, in fact, reality caught up with us and we lost a heater there, and we are going to make emergency repair in the next couple of weeks in order to get this existing heating system with that we can't even get the matching parts for, with some parts that are somewhat compatible, running again until we have the actual heating upgrades completed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my final question in Erickson is to do with the universal metering phase 1. That'll be the end of the program. What are we then? Is that like 50% complete, 75% complete? Where are we at with that that phasing, universal metering?
Certainly, through the chair, currently right now, all procurement's been completed, all equipment's been received, with the exception of a couple of meter pits, but that's an aside. Currently, we are today, in fact, replacing some of the existing agricultural meters, which is sort of the low-hanging fruit we can take care of before issuing the full tender for the phase 1 installation, which will begin in the spring and conclude in the fall of next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. So prior to our break, Director Weatherhead.
Thank you, through the chair. On the Edgewood generator, they had a recent power outage, and some people did not have any water. And so I was just wondering, we are awaiting commissioning on that. I saw that in the report, but do we have a timeline for that commissioning of that backup generator in Edgewood? I'm sorry, I didn't see Edgewood.
No problem, through the chair. Yes, so what we're waiting for, there was some gas fitting certification requirements because it was a bit larger than what the original contractor was able to do. So there's some of that being sorted. Commissioning should be happening within the next 2 weeks, certainly before the end of the month, from the supplier of the generator itself. So it's imminent.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we've had some weird power outages this year. Thank you.
Director Tierney, I see you put your name on the list prior to heading off. Good luck with everything today.
Sorry, the unmuting is not working here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, just reading between the lines of your comments, Uli. The filtration system for the Arrow Creek system and discussions with Interior Health. Is this all around the possibility of going with a sand filtration system rather than the present one? Is this what the discussions are about, and the contract to design a sand filtration system?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Alex.
Through the chair, Director Tierney, I can answer that as I've read through the bulk of the report, not the entirety, but the bulk of it. So they're coming up with 3 recommendations in the draft report. One of them is a CTAC system, which is essentially an absorption clarifier with filtration post that. Again, this is a conversation that's a bit broader in terms of costing and such. So, but they have costed out that as one of the three options. Again, we're going to, in the draft report, they do make a recommendation to have conversations with Interior Health to see if it is even feasible to address the possibility of filtration deferral. All these things, have been presented in the report, and we can have further discussions on when we meet with the Air Quality Commission.
Perfect.
All right, and supplemental,
Yeah, go ahead.
thank you. And so will this be a discussion topic at the CAC?
Through the chair, yes. I believe so. I would be through the CAC and Commission, Air Quality Commission.
Yeah, CSE's Erickson, yes, we bring detailed information to the Arrow Creek Commission and a somewhat filtered down version of information to the Erickson CSE.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so we will now take a 15-minute break. Good luck, Roger, with everything today. So we'll pause until, I think by my adding, it looks like about 10:50. Yeah, so 10:50 we'll reconvene. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going live. We're going live. Are we unmuted? Yeah, thanks, Shirley. Good. We're back from our break. Thanks very much, everyone. We've done the capital plan. We'll move on now to item number 8. Staff change, and this is a report from Alex. Please go ahead, Alex.
Yes, through the chair, this report would outline some changes that are proposed to the operator positions, and in addition, slight addition of total FTE. That would then address some of the additional time that might come forward this next year with the lifting of the moratorium and some system assessments, and also offer a bit of flexibility in terms of the operator positions that's been requested from the operators themselves. So essentially, the change and increase as outlined there would be retaining 2 full-time operators, and then reducing to 2 part-time operators. So that's 0.72 FTE, and no longer hiring a seasonal worker. The cost analysis that's presented there, you can see the change in the FTE and the additional overall estimated amount. So yeah, staff is presenting option 2 to the Water Services Committee to recommend to the board to increase the Water West operation staffing FTE for 2025 from 3.28 to 3.44, and just a reconfiguration essentially of the existing operator positions to 2 full-time and 2 part-time.
Excellent. Okay, it's been moved in. Is it moved? It's moved in the here. Can I have a seconder? The motion. We can discuss it. I didn't see any discussion. That's why now I.
Oh, we have one here.
Yes. Okay. So we moved it. Are you seconding it, or would you like to discuss it?
Discuss it.
And discussion too.
Okay, so it's not moved. Sorry, I misunderstood. Director Popoff and then Director Schmidt. Please go ahead.
Oh, just a question through the chair to staff. When I look at it's only like about a $20,000 increase.
Correct. Yeah, 23,000 and change.
So then I will move the motion.
Thank you for clarifying. It's moved. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
It's seconded for discussion. It is seconded. Director Schmidt, please go ahead.
Thank you. I was directed by because I'm the alternate to vote against it. And I always like to say why rather than just hear about it. Even though the number is very small, it's just any increase in staff is something that the director was opposed to.
Thank you. Seeing if there's more, I don't see anyone else. Wait up just a sec. Why is this not updating? Sorry, my chat wasn't updating. Okay. So I had to step away. Okay, Director Watson, Vandenberg. Well, that was my question. Okay. So Director Vandenberg, please go ahead. I think you.
Right, thank you through the chair. So my question is around the times that, so for a full-time employee, I presume was that 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year? How do you come up with 1872 hours?
That through the chair, that's based on 37 hours per week.
And how many weeks per year?
Yeah.
So if I may explain,
Sure. Yep.
that's how the scheduling here in the Western Subregion works. Our operators all work on average 37 hours per week. And so that's what we based it on. Where office staff has the 35 hours, the operators here work 37, and in the Creston area, actually 40 hours per week. Very common for field staff to work more hours.
Thank you. Okay, and just to be clear, of course, this is not a taxation increase, so this does not affect property tax payers. May affect water users, but a couple of cents a year anyway. Seeing none, the motion is moved and seconded, and I see no other speakers. I'll just double check my list. Okay, so I'll call the question. Is there any opposition? There is. The motion carries. This will go forward to board.
Chair.
Yes.
This question, would this become a participants only report, or is that?
At
West. West.
Water West.
It's not a street service per se, it's an allocation, but.
Yeah, I don't think it will, but I have to verify that. I will make sure we have that discussion with Angela and Stuart.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so thank you for that. We're moving on to number 9, which is verbal reports. And we have 3 of those so far. So we'll start with Chris's Creston Alternate Water Supply Study Project update. Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, just a quick update on the project. Had a couple of milestone meetings and events. So in a nutshell, I think we've made some pretty good progress with the study. I think I presented to the Water Services Committee that we've narrowed the scope for the study to look solely at the Kootenay River as a viable source of alternate water supply for irrigation in the valley. That was done just based on looking at productivity of wells and availability of water, surface water sources. So a bit of a no-brainer to look at the Kootenay River as that viable alternative. We had one of those milestone meetings on November 7th in Creston. We had a stakeholder meeting at the Creston Rec Center. Had a pretty good turnout at that meeting. Did do our best to get the message out to anybody who wanted to attend that meeting in advance. As Director Tierney pointed out, some did get missed with that, but we are following up to engage anybody who wasn't able to attend the meeting to give them the information that they need and to get feedback from them. I think we had around 25 attendees at that public meeting. Mostly agricultural producers. Had a member of the provincial government staff, an agrologist who we've been working with throughout the project attended as well. I think got great feedback at that meeting. We had a formal presentation. I gave a quick background on the project, introduced the project team, and also described how we got to this point, how we really decided to kick off this study. Followed by my intro. Associated Engineering took over and gave a technical presentation, really dialing into their methods and methodology on determining water demands that fed into what our future infrastructure might look like there. So very high level conceptual mapping, infrastructure sizing and routing was presented at the meeting, along with just kind of status of water use in the valley in general, presenting licensed users, unlicensed withdrawals, and then the kind of availability of withdrawals from the various sources in the valley as well. One update to provide you with, we are a little back behind schedule-wise in the project from where we intended to be. We intended to have a final report and end the project by December 31st of this year. Delayed for a number of reasons, staffing changes, and then organizing and scheduling that meeting and getting that feedback in November, of course. So we did reach out to the Investment in Agriculture Foundation, the main grant supporter of the project, requesting an extension to March 31st, 2025, and did receive that. We do think we're quite on track to be able to meet that deadline. Working with the Associated Engineering Project team, we expect a final report for draft sometime in February that we can review and then close out that project. We do have all the information that was presented at that public meeting on our Engage RBCK website for the project that you can go on and take a look at. As well as kind of an update talking about what was presented at that meeting as well. Certainly here to answer any additional questions you might have.
I have 3 people on the speakers list, and I just prior to that, going back into my chat, Director Weatherhead, you missed a question. Are you okay with your?
It's okay because I will ask it on item 10. I just realized, so no worries.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So going to our speakers list, sorry here, I just trying to adapt my screen here. There we go. Okay, Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks.
I've got 3 on the speakers list, FYI. Jackman, Vandenberg, Watson, please go ahead.
Thanks for the update. Just an observation on the spur of the moment. If a owner or client gives me a 3-month extension, I don't necessarily give that whole 3 months to my subcontractors. However, maybe it'll be answered through my question I was going to ask earlier. I enjoyed hearing from the consultant and the report, and I'm really looking sort of forward to next steps when this information comes back to the public, whether that would be through the Crescent Valley Services Committee, perhaps instead of a separate presentation. Quite a few people in the valley are used to meeting with us as Crescent Valley Services. I think some people watch for that because we cover so many topics. But the main question, have you been able to have discussions, or will you have a presentation to Yakanuki or Kanaha? Or have you received their input already? Is that also part of what's going to take between now and the February final draft?
So through the chair, yeah, we had direction to communicate with them. Ideally, actually have a council to directors meeting with them to discuss that study. That direction was given to us. We passed that on to Yakanuki. They had, at the time, and that was requested, their extended summer break with council. They had very full agendas. I have spoken, in fact, yesterday to a staff member of Yakanuki. It has not made it on their agenda as of today. And I don't know that there's much point at this stage, as the director pointed out, well, we don't just give 3 months extension. So in fact, we wanted to be done with this study ideally by now. I don't know what the point is of having that meeting at this point, unless the draft report comes back where directors feel there was something missed or a discussion point embellished or whatever it is, then we can have that discussion happily. But I don't know that a meeting now would fulfill the objective that we had when the initial request was made. But like I said, we have not been able to establish that meeting as of today.
Supplemental?
Yeah.
I would like you to ask her, put the invitation out again. I mean, to make sure the ramifications, if we come off of wells, authorized or not, that are impacting the aquifer, impacting the flows into the lower Gulf, impacting potentially the water temperature, which impacts the kokanee spawning recovery potential. All of those things of high importance to Kanaha and Yakanuki, whereas we can provide clean economical water potentially and not have those impacts on that bench, all the way down to Lister, potentially. I think it's important to reach out again, because that's where we can talk about those things which we didn't talk about at the other public meeting, which was very focused on an engineering proposal.
So if I may, without wanting to go too far away from the intent of the report here, but that is exactly the discussion we are having with the staff. So there's, for example, a current discussion about a ministerial approval of the deep water licenses, deep aquifer licenses approval out that the ministry intends to approve. I had a discussion with the officer in that regard and said that we would have concerns if they cannot prove that the deeper aquifer is isolated from the other aquifers that we know are suffering and are insufficient. So prior to approval, they said they would look into it. They would have hydrology information that confirms that. I'm still waiting to hear, and that's the same actually what Yakanuki currently is doing. They're pushing back. They were supposed to comment on that license approval because they were a referral agency, we were not. They were supposed to comment by year end on going to request an extension for the comment, waiting for the output of this report to support whatever their comment is going to be. So in effect, we have similar concerns. We have similar comments in regards to the study versus what is happening in practice, that they are somewhat appear to be disconnected and that the one should inform the other. That discussion is happening at staff level, but obviously not at council or director's level, and I fully understand that. I will reach out again and see if there's an option to meet in January, for example, and have that discussion.
Thank you. And if you could coordinate with the board chair, I think that's an element or individual we should include because of other conversations. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Vandenberg.
Yes, thank you. Gary covered off a number of things. I want to point out that I didn't get an invitation for that November 7th gathering. I guess I'm interested. I've gone to the website to try to find what are the key words for me to find that which Chris said was being posted there. Do I type in alternative water supply? Where do I go to find this on the web?
Yeah, through the chair, the project page is listed on the Engage RDCK website. So if you Google Engage RDCK, you should land on that site. That site has a number of regional district projects on it. You just scroll down and you'll see a map of Creston and the title of the project there. Click on that, you'll be brought to a page with the project explainer, as well as the survey and all the presentation and the items that we discussed and presented at that Creston meeting. I can certainly follow up with you, and I will right after this meeting with a link directly to that. But yeah, Googling Engage RDCK and then just scrolling down on that website, you'll find it.
Thank you. I am flipping through the website now. I don't see Engage RDCK. So yes, if a link could be sent out, I would greatly appreciate it. Don't want to run down a bunch of rabbit holes trying to find something on here. Thank you.
Very good. Director Watson.
Thank you. Please send me the link as well, Chris. That would be very helpful. I'd like to review those materials. And yes, thank you, Director Jackman, for your questions. I would like to be included in any meetings that include Yakanuki Council or other First Nations elected representatives. Thank you.
Very good. All right. So I see, I'm trying my best. Scream if I move on and I ignored you. Moving on to 9.2. Go ahead, Julie.
9.2, septic strategy. Yes, so, and this is just for your information, the actual discussion will occur at the resource recovery meeting. But as you are aware, Likely, we are struggling with our septic facilities, compliance, capacity, our intent to cooperate with municipalities at using their treatment facilities as established treatment facilities instead of having our standalone ones. You're all informed about that, but reality is it is currently at resource recovery level, neither from a workload perspective nor from an expertise perspective, the right place to be, including the comments from the ministry. This is not solid waste, but liquid waste. So my intent is to link Chris, who has background in wastewater treatment, significant background, into that topic and transition some of the tasks related to our septic strategies over to Chris. The big question, big elephant in the room still is, do we need a liquid waste management plan or not? If that occurs, this becomes a much bigger topic anyhow for us. But I think it will help with Chris's background and as well with his familiarity with the city of Nelson that is conducting currently a liquid waste management plan that we participate in to give our perspective and our provide our interest in that. So that will help having Chris in that function. So that's something I will propose to the Resource Recovery Committee going forward. I would just want to know you because this group, as utilities, is effective because we take some of Chris's available time and dedicate it to that task for now, if we go forward with that. So for information only to be discussed at Resource Recovery.
Looking around, are there questions? Sorry, I'm in and out of chat and. Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Uli, that update of that ongoing fun thing, and I've lost my agenda, so I'll go to this one, number 3. Provincial Medical Health Officer meeting with Uli, please.
Yes, again, just an FYI. We are in Balfour with our water treatment plant in a situation. So a little bit of history, that water system until the regional district took it over, the water supply was strict pumping from the lake, zero treatment, went through a reservoir and out to the town. In 2010, we put a treatment plant in with a effectively three-stage treatment, UV chlorination, and a sand filtration that was originally followed by a 2-stage cartridge filtration, including a 1-micron filtration. It was very quickly evident that the 1-micron filtration, the one that is acknowledged by Interior Health as the actual effective treatment only, they don't count any of the prior treatment of it. But we had to remove it because at that point, that system was in a much worse financial situation, but they couldn't afford the frequent filtration changes required to maintain these 1-micron filters in there. We removed them. We had significant discussions with Interior Health about the acceptability because the system was obviously designed and approved in the construction permit with these filters in. They ultimately agreed on a what we call filtration deferral, as Alex pointed out earlier. Filtration deferral, which means we continue to monitor the performance of the system without these filters in and try to establish a case from the water quality data that we develop over these years of operating it to say, look, it works without. We have, I think, have gotten to a point where Interior Health actually was satisfied with what we were doing and supporting that approach. However, they came to us saying that the medical health officer does not accept that approach. So for us now, it is the problem that we have to have that discussion with the medical health officer, provide the historic background, provide our approach, provide the data that we have, and hopefully work out a compromise, a joint compromise in going forward without having to establish a full-blown treatment, meeting the criteria of interior health for large water systems, which ultimately would mean an additional building with additional filtration infrastructure likely, or the continuation of the 1 micron filters at a substantial cost of the system, where we don't see that the cost is matching the benefit. So just for your information, that's where we are going. If we are unsuccessful, this could worst case scenario and as one that we come back to the director saying it's worthwhile a lobbying effort with the ministry. I have as well reached out, not gotten feedback yet, but have reached out to the MLA to inform her about this issue. Maybe in her current role, she can be of benefit in regards to that discussion. So that's just for information.
Yes, go ahead, Director Jackman.
So
Director Watson.
I'm wondering how we got to the medical health officer. I thought Superior Health Authority did all their own engineering review and approval and sanctioning of designs and issued construction permits and all that kind of stuff. Is this a special case that somehow got referred to Bonnie Henry's office, or is she given a mandate now to start reviewing more of our systems? Because a lot of them would fail that far.
I believe, you want to go ahead?
I can answer this question. I spoke to Priya, who is the EHO for that system, and he said there is the delegated drinking water officer, which is the EHO for large system, which is Priya in this case, and then designated drinking water officer, which is the medical health officer, and that is essentially the individual who delegates that requirement from the province. So that's the medical health officer. They're the designated drinking water officer.
So, and why it's referred to that level, if I may, through the chair,
please.
is likely because we don't fully meet the standards that are normally set out for a large system. Having said that, that will be part of the discussion. None of the municipalities, other than Creston, supply through our water systems, and there might be a couple smaller ones, but none of the larger towns here meets that criteria currently. So we feel this is very counterproductive to our effort of lifting the moratorium and be there if some water systems want our support, and that it flies in the face of the fact that we have hundreds and hundreds of water systems that have worse water to drink than our raw water source is. And so we do not understand in that context why this requirement needs to be made. So that's the discussion we are hoping to have.
Director Watson, are you wanting to speak on this? Sorry, I'm just tracking chat as best I
So
can.
sorry, if I may say,
yeah, no,
if I say medical health officer, ultimately I'm sure you're not talking to the medical health officer, but to the engineering group that decided on that insufficiency.
Yeah, got it. Director Watson.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that when staff go political, you need to involve the political reps from the table. So not saying you did anything wrong, but if you're going to be speaking to Minister Anderson, please loop myself and respective directors in, because we also have conversations with them, with her, and there's different things going on. So it just means streamlined communications, and we're all in the same loop.
If I may clarify, all it was to provide information, not requesting to become active in that file. I totally agree. If we want her to take action in any form, this would come through the political level. 100% agree.
I appreciate that. Sorry, supplemental quickly.
Yeah.
Appreciate that Uli, for that clarification, and just noting it's difficult with verbal reports to follow the details. So I'm sorry. If there's any way to get that in a written report, it's helpful, especially on big issues like this.
As you see, we have 3 verbal reports. It is a struggle to provide timely information with the workload we have. We certainly could have provided written reports, but that would have meant you get that information in February at the next Water Service Committee. And so that's where we try to weigh effectivity and timely information sharing versus workload and formal reports. But I'm open. If you prefer not to receive verbal reports, I'm happy to restrict ourselves and then provide this information when we are able to provide written reports.
Well, the chair is going to step in and say, I don't think we want a motion that says this committee will only receive written reports, because at the committee level, the intention of setting up committees, my understanding was to have fulsome discussions, bring topics forward, and less formalized approach than the board. And so if we need a written report, it can certainly follow a verbal report. But as chair, I totally appreciate verbal reports when they come forward in all of our committees to the board. But the executive committee could take that forward and discuss with the CAO this afternoon at 3 or 1 o'clock when they meet for their agenda setting. So could I suggest, Chair, that you have that conversation at executive and bring the idea to board, read verbal reports to subcommittees or committees of the board?
Respectfully, no, it's not that complicated in terms of, we don't need a motion. I'm just, best practice is a report. It helps us be able to understand what's being said. We get to read it in advance. I understand Uli's response. We don't need a motion to say only written reports here. I get the nuances in between. I was just indicating that that's sometimes why we have a lot more questions on verbal reports, because it's harder to follow because we haven't had material to read. So I get what he's saying. We don't need a motion to say only only written reports. Ideally, when we can, please put it in a written form. It's just way better. And I know staff will do what they can.
Very good. So anyone else on the Provincial Medical Health Officer meeting? Reid Balfour, very interesting. Very interesting indeed for those of us that are not providing potable water to our users, and we have 60 users and et cetera, and we multiple challenges. So very interesting. Thanks, Uli. We'll move on to item number 10, and it's presented to you for your information. And if the director were to have a question that would be appropriate in this meeting, they're free to raise their hand. Director Jackman, please go ahead.
Thank you. Of course, my scribbled notes here, I'm not going to ask the first one because it's trivial looking at the time. I'll ask it separately. But I have a question regarding the $130,000 capital line item in there, whether that's for leak detection equipment, that kind of stuff. Nothing was spent. This is
Which
under A103, sorry, under A103.
Yeah.
And then I have another question on A103. We show on the income line item 45,550 transfer from environmental services fee 900,000 change. Then under expenses, we have transfer line 59,550 transfer to environmental services. We're giving 105,000 back. So on the first service A103, the questions are, what is that 130 capital for? Is that more leak detection, fancier equipment? And then why are we putting money?
Let him answer, okay?
One at a time.
Yeah. So the capital is solely vehicles. There was the intent to purchase 2 vehicles. One is in process, one we haven't decided on, will show up in the 25 budget again. The in regards to the environmental services fee, I'm not really happy with the naming conventions that we have to live with. Either the upper one in the revenue side is the contributions that are coming from the water systems. And by the way, something I mentioned, forgot to mention, you see a shortage of 100,000. There was actually a mistake on my side in regards to reviewing the contributions from water systems, shorting us in this budget by $100,000. So that's something we will have to address in the 2025 budget. The transfer to other services, environmental services fee on the very bottom of service A103 is the contribution to A100, meaning the general environmental services, that's myself, the secretarial support, some of the office and health, no, not health, but office cost. So some of the general costs that land in here, that's the contribution to that service.
Thanks. Maybe you should have known both of those. It just before we get into the full budget, the other one, if I can share, A113, utilities construction, we show 122,001 transferred from other services. And I think that would have been, to pay down the loan for the equipment that we bought. There is also a prior year deficit. I don't know if that's the outstanding balance on the loan. The way it's worded, it's difficult to track. And then that kind of leads to, if we still have that equipment, because it doesn't look like we disposed of it, that goes back to A103, 170,000. Sort of, what's the situation with that equipment right now? And is that why in A113 we're showing this money in and out? Are we still paying the loan down? And I think I should know we're at the end of that loan.
We are not at the end of the loan yet. But what the problem here is that my intention was to have this all carried over into A103 instead of having this. This should have been ideally a blank sheet, but in the budget process didn't happen that way. The second one is that we have not disposed the equipment yet. So we have now support. Mark Brathwaite now is helping us to streamline both purchase and sale of these equipment items. We are making progress, but unfortunately haven't got to the point of actually selling it. But there's processes established. There's the various tools available, how we can buy and sell equipment established. So I'm quite pleased on that end. But ultimately, the deficit that we are seeing is because the equipment hasn't been sold, which is the excavator, which is 2 vehicles, and which is some of the smaller hand tools and the trailer. So that's still here. So the assets are still here that are matching that deficit that you're seeing.
So supplemental on the
Just for clarity, people, we set up an in-house system for pipe repair and what have you, and that the board decided that that was untenable and agreed to that. So these assets remain within the RDCK, within this service. Is that approximately correct, Billy? Yes, correct. Go ahead, Director Jackman.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, that's a good preamble to my next point. I mean, we found bringing on and maintaining a crew to these projects. Burton was a target of Edgewood, some, fairly remote from maybe where the bigger population centers was problematic. So we discontinued that. However, policy, my understanding, requires that if any substantial assets such as this are to be disposed of, first potential recipient is another RDCK service. And then it would go out. I'm glad we have a purchasing agent, something I rallied for a decade ago, maybe more. I mean, that's an appropriate move for the organization size. But before we get to selling off, I seriously wonder if Lister or Eastside Water Systems, they have millions of dollars of linear infrastructure replacement. Some of it will be best contracted in large chunks. Some of it might make sense to have one or more of these pieces of equipment, vehicle or excavator, in the east. And I would hope that there's going to be, I won't be there, but a good conversation with Arrow and Erickson and Lister about whether or not those assets should be transferred to those systems for use in that, whatever, 2, 3,
Do you have a
10
comment, Louis?
It's almost a discussion on its own and definitely a worthwhile consideration. Situation right now is in the east, we have a backhoe that they use for the smaller work. Typically, if we do larger project with in-house involvement, somewhat larger, not the really large ones, somewhat larger, we bring a hired excavator from an established company in, which then actually increases our crew to a manageable level as well. I mean, we have 3 operators other than the supervisor out there. We are somewhat limited to put a crew to dedicate it to a larger project, but it is a worthwhile discussion that we probably should have sooner than later if that's the intent, because otherwise this equipment is being sold. We have, meanwhile, it's my understanding, brought it from its original, the excavator is the main one, from its original location here to clean it up to make it presentable even for sale. Yeah, I'm happy to have that discussion if that's the intent that, or the directors to have.
So how would that happen? Because this unit, who paid for this unit? All of us, right? So that
it is a loan ultimately that
Yeah.
was taken out through this A113 service. The first 1 or 2 installments were paid through the benefiting water systems that received water lines using that equipment. And any further payments are being made now through A103 with an asset in place that matching that money. So there's a short-term cash shortage until we have sold these units, but that's the process. We did actually offer 1 or maybe even 2 of the vehicles internally. The offers we got didn't match what we felt needs to be the minimum price for it. So there was some perception of subsidized vehicle or whatever. So we didn't sell it ultimately because we felt there was a lot more value there going to the private market.
Yeah, and the reason I mentioned it is just who owns the asset, that's all. I didn't want to belabor it. So then the conversation is who wants to buy it from us, and does that water system want to make an offer to us? So in furthering that conversation, I just wanted to clarify the pathway. So if Erickson wants to buy it, they can buy it. Or Lister, or one of those, I don't know, that they're over there. So anything else? Did I miss a speaker that wanted to talk about that? I don't see whether it was this Director Weatherhead, go ahead, please. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to S253, the Edgewood budget or water, whatever, service statement. And I would have asked this in under item 7, but nonetheless, the reservoir, old reservoir removal. I would like some clarity through the chair to staff on. We have an agreement with the Edgewood community on the old reservoir. So this kind of just, I'm quite confused why I'm seeing this. Is there more than one reservoir? How does this work?
You want for sure.
I think,
Go ahead,
I
Alex.
think you have more.
Okay, go ahead.
So Edgewood Reservoir, there used to be with the original water system a what we call balancing reservoir up on the hill, and a reservoir location that you can't even drive to. So it was a bit complex to get rid of it. So when we did the past capital projects, we didn't remove it as part of that and said that, well, it's going to fall. There was as well a little bit of somebody might be interested in it, might deconstruct it for free, that fell apart, but nevertheless, so there's a little bit of history there. Our current used reservoir is the new reservoir that's next to our wells and the same location where we are currently installing the backup generator. So that's the one, the only one that is in use. The old one that is talked about here is up on the hill, disconnected with a line that's coming down the hill in a box with insulation, and that's the part that would need to be removed as part of decommissioning it or having decommissioned it.
Thank you. Supplemental?
Yeah, supplemental to that. So have we, I don't recall this coming up in the last CAC meeting, although we haven't had one this year. I would just like to make sure that the committee is aware of that removal, because if there is still interest in that community to utilize that, would we want to make sure of that before we go and spend $50,000?
Difficult one. This is probably a similar item than what we have with a weir that the system owns that we don't use anymore. But fact is, there's likely a license of occupation attached to it. There's likely an expectation when we no longer use it as water system infrastructure to remove that so that not everybody leaves their old remnants everywhere where there was once a license of occupation. That's my guess. I have not looked at the details of that license of occupation or whatever is in place. I seem to remember that there was use at some point for radio equipment or whatever on that location. Not 100% certain about that. I'm happy to talk about it, but I don't think we can just hand it over to somebody and say, here, be happy with it and walk away from it. There's obligations under our license of occupation. So we have in another water system, we own a weir that we no longer use because we are connected to a municipal water system. We would like to deconstruct it, but because there's other uses and it's on private property, we have not been able to deconstruct it. So we are stuck with that requirement. The province doesn't allow us to transfer the asset to that private party because we were the original license holder, and we can't just walk away from it. So we have the liability of that dam, but can't get rid of it because the property owner doesn't allow it. So all I'm saying is it's complex when you have these remnants of a water infrastructure obliged through a license of occupation to actually remove it when you no longer use it, but can't necessarily do it. So complications that we have to work through. We'll do a little bit more digging and get back to you, Derek.
Thank you. Yes.
Rest can be taken offline for that system.
Thank
So
you.
that's
Yeah,
good.
I would just like
Yeah.
adequate communication. Thank you.
And do I see Director Watson? I'm just tracking when I was putting, Director Watson, do you have a comment, question?
Yeah, I have a question, and I apologize if this was one of Director Jackman's questions. I got a call during that time. I was just curious about we're still on item 10, right? I didn't lose that much. Okay, good. On where did it go? A103 salaries, I see year to date 565 with total remaining in budget 77,000, but I assume our year to date goes to March.
Sorry. The year to date goes to end of October, I believe. If you see differences here, this is because we have this little monster called operator admin. So our logged operating hours are the ones that are charged directly to that salary line item. The ones that are not directly associated with a water system, they are logged under general code and land in A103. So we have a salary. Go ahead.
So my question is 88% of the budget has been used. I believe the budget goes to March. Are we going to be over budget on salaries?
No, our budget cycle is January to December. And
okay.
This is a statement, I believe, to end of October. Yeah, okay. So we have 2 months remaining in that period.
Okay, my apologies. I just saw that current month was 112 and we would surpass that with what's left. So I was just checking in and I couldn't recall if our budget cycle aligned with our actual.
So that would exceed the $643,000 in the budget. The reason for that is that the operator admin calculation is actually offsetting that exceedance.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Good enough? Okay, great. So seeing no further speakers, we can move on to correspondence for receipt. It's received. And we'll just receive it and carry on. And so we move on to the meeting schedule that's proposed. And I'd like just as chair to make a comment. Chris, at the last meeting to which I was unable to attend because I was on vacation, kind of said I was going to resign the position of chair, not run. It's not resign, not run for next year, but I kind of want to change my mind. So I might see if I get nominated at the first meeting in 2025. So just so you know, it was a time when, anyway, I so enjoy chairing this committee. So I may put my name forward. So those are the dates, every second month, the first Wednesday. And are there any comments? And I see Director Weatherhead. Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Normally these meetings go from 9 to 12. And so I just had noticed that April 2nd is also the date of all rec that's posted as 9 to 12. So just wasn't sure.
Thanks for that. We'll talk to Joe.
Through the chair, Evan just gave me the heads up. It's scheduled for the afternoon on that date, so it's not conflicting with our.
It's not conflicting.
Yeah.
Ours is scheduled in the afternoon. Thanks for noting that. So
ideally, we got a 9 a.m. start, but we got to be but.
Right. So we'll be starting in the PM on the 2nd. Thanks for that, Director.
Why do we have to move on?
Yeah, exactly. Why not, Joe? We're having a little infighting here. It's very nice. A little push-pull. We'll see who wins. I'll leave it between Uli and Joe.
Turn off the wall.
Yes. So no further comments. I'll now ask for public time here at 11:42. And I don't see any of the public.
There is one online public.
Is there? Okay. Well, I'll just give the person a chance to, public, there we go, the picture. I'll certainly pause for a moment, allowing you the opportunity to ask us any questions that you may have. And I'll
Public
count down.
answered in chat, Chair, no questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, well then, we can request a recommendation to adjourn the meeting. It's moved and seconded in the meeting hall here, in the real world, not the other world. So without any opposition, seeing none, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Great questions. Staff, thanks so much for the in-depth information. See all of you guys next